So butterflies have 4 life cycles, and their entire life is pretty much centered upon transforming, changing into the next whatever it's going to be. So it starts off as an egg, and from an egg it goes to the larvae of the caterpillar, and from a caterpillar it goes to the cocoon, and from a cocoon into a butterfly, a beautiful butterfly that we know today. The thing about that is, like I said, the whole time a butterfly's life expectancy is, for the most part, pretty short. So that means its entire life is about changing, transforming. And when you get to the nitty-gritty of the caterpillar, it's really not even like a really pretty, beautiful thing. It's a very, when it's a caterpillar, it eats, and it gorges itself, and it becomes 100 times bigger than when it first started. So it's really not a very pretty thing, a nice thing. It's just really like, it's nature. It's kind of nasty. It's kind of gross, right? What does that have to do with what we're talking about today? Brothers and sisters, all of us are called by God to do something. Some of us have been called to work with people. Some of us have been called to, love others more. Some of us have been called to feed the homeless, be priests. Many of us have been called to do different things by God. The first reading today is Jeremiah. All 3 readings really are about people who are getting a calling from God. Jesus is getting his calling from God. Jesus knows what he has to do. As uncomfortable as it is for his disciples to hear, Jesus knows exactly what lies ahead of him. So Jeremiah was young. He was a young prophet. I oftentimes see myself in Jeremiah. Many of y'all have been here y'all saw my first homily, what Father Jamie called a homily. And even then, I can see myself in Jeremiah. Why? Because Jeremiah was a young guy. He was a younger guy. He was young. He was so young that when he got his calling from Jesus, from God, he was like, no, not me. Not only that, the information, the job that Jeremiah was given by God was to go and tell the people, warn the people, give these people a warning, give them a message that they weren't really too comfortable with. So what happened to Jeremiah? He ended up being thrown into a cistern. He was tortured. He was thrown in jail. And so here in the readings today, in the first reading rather, Jeremiah is asking God, you fooled me, you duped me, and I allowed myself to be duped. How many of us here have ever felt kind of duped by God? Like, God, I thought this is what I was supposed to be doing. And now we know. No. I was talking to Father Mark before Mass today, and I was thinking about something that I've heard over and over again throughout the last couple of years. If you really want to make God laugh, tell God what your plans are. God's got God's plan. We think we know it all. Oftentimes we want to do what's easiest for us, what's more comfortable, what's more, the easiest decision, what's going to be comfortable really, what's going to make us feel better. But it's not always about that. Today in the gospel, first of all, last week we heard Peter being told that he was going to be the rock on which the church is built on. And then today, what do we hear? Jesus is, it's kind of scary. Can you imagine having Jesus call you, Satan tell you, you're an obstacle? I couldn't imagine, but that's what Peter is faced with today. Peter thought he was loving God. He thought he was loving Jesus. Jesus, you're not going to go anywhere. I love you so much. You're so awesome. Why would that happen to you? Because Jesus knew what his calling was. And as uncomfortable as it would be for Jesus to admit what his call, Jesus knew. Brothers and sisters, all of us have a calling. The second reading today tells us that in order for us to change, any change in our life first comes from really a thought, right? We have to, in order to initiate any kind of change, we have to first think about it. Okay, well, if I have to get up earlier tomorrow, then I have to go to bed earlier today. I have to make dinner earlier. I have to, so on and so forth. It comes with a thought. And the first reading today tells us that any change in our lives happens first with our mind. First renew and change our mind. And when we do that, what's going to end up happening is you clear your mind up more for us to be able to discern what is our calling, what is God telling us to do. With a cloudy mind, it's almost like, have you ever heard of beer goggles? Beer goggles, you can't really see until everything's off. It's almost like you walk around with our lives with beer goggles. Like, we have to, in order to clear our minds so that way we can better discern what it is that God's telling us. Without a clear mind, we're going to always think, worldly thoughts, I guess. We're not going to come to God with a clear heart and clear mind, open and willing and ready to follow whatever it is that God's calling us to do. Today, the Apostle Paul invites us to a spiritual transformation in the second reading. What does that mean? For this whole week, I was like, what does that mean? Essentially, what it boils down to is telling God, I trust in your plan more than I trust in my plan. Brothers and sisters, sometimes that might be hard for us. Oftentimes, it's hard to admit when we're wrong, right? We want to think that we're right. For a long time, in my early teens, I was in a crazy abusive relationship. I didn't want to admit that it was abusive. Why? Because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong. I thought that this is what God had planned for me. But here it is today, more than 15 years later, that I understand that's not what God had planned for me. God had more planned for me. God had things planned for me that I couldn't even imagine for myself. If you would ask me then if I was going to get married in my church, never. I needed to understand then that God had other things planned for me that I didn't understand. We often talk about the mysteries in church. Mysteries. That word for me is like, I don't like that word because it's just, I don't like mysteries. We always want to know. We want to know what we want to know. But sometimes we have to be just comfortable in knowing that we don't know everything. God knows everything. Brothers and sisters, I pray that this week we all take one step forward to clearing our minds so that we're able to better discern what it is that God's calling us to do. Amen.
Amen.